Get your taproot down to permanent water, then that's going to be a stronger adaptive advantage. Now, the grasses have it figured out. You know, they take up the entire top 2 feet of soil with their roots. If you're a dicot, you have a hard time competing with that. But the problem is, if it never rains, the adaptive advantage would be to have a taproot to get down to the below ground water, but you have to have lived long enough to get down there. So in areas that have shallow groundwater, a taproot is going to be the advantage. In areas that have deep groundwater and have very intermittent rain events, which type of strategy is going to be best? Deep groundwater and irregular rain events. You want to get the water as quickly as you can when it does rain.
You want the sponge.
You want the sponge. You want the sponge. So the weather dictates the survival strategy. The climate dictates the survival strategy. We've been kind of building on this. The geology dictates the type of soil. The climate dictates the type of weather. So you've got your soil and your weather, and those two things together are going to dictate who survives. Yeah, Karen?
The grasses, Big Blue can have roots that go down 50 feet though, right?
Yep, yep. And so they've got a survival strategy that allows them, and that question, and maybe some of you can answer that, that question would be, is it to get deep reaching water? Is it, because that's an investment of a lot of energy to get roots that deep.
My understanding is most of the water and nutrient uptake, though, is by the shallow roots.
Right.
And the big roots.
So it's anchoring, you think? Rather than
It could
absorption?
be it could be tapping it, but only in extreme emergencies.
So that's putting a lot of, to make it that deep, that's putting a lot of energy in the production of tissue that may or may not be all that useful.
But it's over many years, or not years, but it's over a long period of time.
But why do it?
Well, it is to get down to the deep water and
Deep
drought.
water.
If you can't, if there isn't any up there, then it probably just keeps looking.
It's back up.
If it can live that long, yeah.
But why not have multiple strategies? I mean, that's what any
And maybe that's
any system that really wants to survive uses absolutely every resource it's got. It's a gamble.
Well, yeah, it's
So-
going to be survival. What works allows survival.
But the thing of it is, if you have 2 grasses, and one's putting half its energy into deep roots and putting half into shallow roots, and the other one's putting all of it into shallow roots, and you have lots of rain, which one's going to win?
Exactly.
Shallow.
One with the shallow roots. But if every so often you have a drought, then which one is one with the deep
So
roots?
this isn't a want. This is a what system survives. So you have to be careful with the, oh, I'm going to be smart and I'm going to do this. That's not happening. What's happening is just they have a structure that works and they survive, they get to reproduce. That's how evolution works. If you survive, you get to reproduce. If you're dead, no reproduction.
So isn't one way of maybe looking at that the plants that have a really deep but also fibrous root systems that spread out are naturally selected to this continental climate that it has highly variable patterns in rainfall, and then over thousands of years these are the plants that have outcompeted.
And that may be exactly what's happening. That may be exactly what's happening.
That's why wheat does so well. Continental climate.
So there's the physiological differences. And you've got in sod formation is the fibrous root. And there's the taproot.
That is really long.
Mesquite can get 50 feet long. Mesquite can be huge. Okay. And some, I don't have any pictures of this, but you can imagine some storage roots being like a carrot for a storage root for the excess sugars and water. Go ahead.
No.
What is that, cassava root? What am I thinking of? Breadfruit?
No, cassava root, not
Cassava
breadfruit.
root.
Yeah, breadfruit's fruit.
Okay, but there's one. Cassava, okay. So stems. Function of stems, leaf attachment, and people always like, well, duh, but what does that mean? But not all plants have stems. If you had a stem, you want that stem to do something for you. Get your leaves up, hopefully over your neighbors. It is a plant eat plant world out there. It is competition. It is competition, and they want to be getting all the sun that they can get, and they don't want their neighbors to be getting their sun. So hopefully, and you know, just think of the tropics. The tropics, they don't worry about water. They worry about sun. And they have these huge leaves and these skinny little stems that get really high, and it's all about sun. Right here?
Slender stems.
Oh,
Some
skinny.
of us don't
You
use
don't
the
like
word
skinny?
skinny.
I think you're going to be a troublemaker today. So it's all about getting those leaves up to the light. Secondary functions, storage. Plants have to store the two things they need, water and starch. The stems are also allowing the conduction of the water and the sugar. Poemen's protection. Okay, so address the palms, because I was going to say monocots never have wood or bark, so palm trees.
Palm trees don't have wood or bark. It's not wood or bark. It's lignified tissue, but it's not wood and bark.
But they don't have secondary growth.
They don't have secondary growth. There are, you don't want to go in there. There are a couple of monocots that we don't need to worry
Okay,
about.
all right, I was going to say, okay, monocots never have wood or bark. You're not going to have...
There's a couple of weird monocots.
We don't want weird ones.
That's the advanced upper level plant.
Well, monocots don't have wood or bark. The dicots can have the wood or bark, a secondary growth. So the secondary growth that we're talking about is the increasing width of a stem each year. So as a stem grows with the annual rings each year, that type of growth is secondary growth. Plants growing taller each year, and I'll get to that in a second, but plants getting longer from the tips of the roots and the tips of the stems getting longer, that is primary growth. And so monocots only have primary growth. Dicots can have both primary and secondary growth. And so this is what we were going out to get this morning. We have our woody twigs. So take one, pass one around.
Should I hang on to it or pass it around?
Well, hopefully we have enough for everybody.
Okay.
If not, just break stuff off.
There you go. Got lunch all over here.
Let's try to have at least one or two twigs per row, because I don't know if we're gonna have enough for everybody. And I need to run up and get a couple of show and tell items.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the question from cedars, if you go out in the mountainous areas where the arcade and later on the basket makers, Pueblo people, there were cedars there. I don't know whether they're the same kind. Because they used to eat the berries, and when times got really tough, they ate the bark too. There were cedars out there. I don't know.
Okay, so getting back to our woody twig. The woody twigs have some specific anatomy that's helpful for you to know as a docent. We're only going to have woody twigs in what, monocots or dicots? Dicots, okay. So notice that a woody twig has specific areas where there are buds. Those buds are regions on the twig known as a node. A node is where you're going to have bud growth, and the buds are going to lead to new leaves. Now you're going to also have a bud on the end of the twig. That terminal bud is where the stem is growing in length. So this is where you've got new stem growth. Terminal bud. Some of those twigs have a nice terminal bud on them. Some of them have the terminal bud broken off. So that's where the primary growth is happening. Plants grow completely differently from animals. If I were to hold up a baby and say, where's this baby growing? And you'd say, well, it's growing everywhere. Plants grow at specific regions. You can point. A plant is growing right there. Plant is growing at these buds. The stem will grow in width, but these specific regions have specific kinds of cells that are doing cell division and growth. Where this terminal bud stops, it will leave a scar, and then it will start growing again. You can see the scar from the past stop here. It's called a terminal bud scar. You can look for the presence of terminal bud scars on a stem to see how healthy that tree is. If it has just a short distance between terminal bud scars, that means it's not a very healthy plant. It hasn't grown very much. If you've got a terminal bud scar and then 3 feet of growth to the next terminal bud scar, that's telling you that's a healthy plant. And there's at least one of those branches that has some pretty good growth between the terminal bud scars. Okay. Let's see, what else to point out? So the space between the nodes is the internode. And notice that we have a particular arrangement of the buds at the nodes. So here, we have one on this side, then one on this side, then one on this side. How would you describe that arrangement?
Alternate.
That's alternate. So we're seeing a terminal bud, leaf buds, terminal bud, terminal bud, terminal bud scar, terminal bud scar. And then we're seeing these little spots. These are little pores through the bark that allow the movement of gases. Mostly,
What are they again?
they're pores.
Okay.
P-O-R-E-S. Yeah, they're pores. Okay. Now, is the stem doing photosynthesis? Not usually, right? So the leaves are doing photosynthesis, and you need to imagine that water is going up. Do plants need water for photosynthesis?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so the water is going up. Are there living cells in the stem?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the living cells need food?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so the sugar is going down. Now, if you're like my mother-in-law, who lives in Minnesota, who is saying, thank God, maybe spring has finally come, she is tapping the maple trees. Why is she doing that?
Because the sap's starting to flow.
My mother-in-law makes her own maple syrup, and the sugar is starting to move. Now, this is what's interesting. Plants don't have leaves in the winter, so the sugar is moving which way? It's going from the root stores and it's going up to power the production of new foliage. And so in the spring, she's got it down to a science. I mean, she knows exactly what kind of temperature the night before, and then the next day that she says that the syrup's going to run. You know about this, Jan? Syrup's going to run. She gets out and she taps it, and so the sugar is going from the roots up. That's when it starts going backwards. But in the fall, it went down. So plants have a lot of different strategies for using their organs to take care of jobs. And we hear a lot about rhizomes. So a rhizome, seen on the upper left, and there, is an underground, horizontally growing storage stem. Underground, horizontally growing storage stem. Now, there we can see it in an iris. There's another one. I don't know how these transitions got in there. I didn't put them in there. Whoops. Okay, no, go back here. Okay, and I